the techniques they used and the intimidation that you would undergo in their presence, it was so, how would you say, it was just so overwhelming and terrorizing that, you know, I don't know.
She's speaking of Father Ramon Angles, an accused rapist, pederast, and Nazi sympathizer, appointed to a powerful position in the Catholic breakaway group, the Society of St. Pius X, by former Superior General Bishop Bernard Fallet, who himself is covering up and lying about sexual abuse of minors within his society. Maria is the third person to confirm with church militant that Michael Gonzalez, her brother, admitted to them that Angles had raped him in his youth, going on to kill himself at age 25, as shown in this police report confirming his death on February 18, 2000, also leaving a letter behind naming Angles as his rapist. Father Angles is under criminal investigation in the U.S., but also reportedly in Ireland for sex abuse, whose effects continue to devastate those left behind. Do you believe that Father Angles should be in prison?
Absolutely, 100%. He should pay for his crimes. Yeah.
And he's never done so.
He never has. No.
What's more, Angles has secured an attorney who's one of the most public LGBT activists in Kansas.
Same-sex marriage promotes family values.
Despite the accusations, Angles is the one whom Bishop Fallet, unbelievably, charged with crafting the child protection policies for the FSSPX. Just like homosexual predator Cardinal Theodore McCarrick, one of America's most powerful cardinals, put in charge of drafting child protection policies for the U.S. bishops, it's a classic case of putting the fox in charge of the hen house. For the traditionalist world, they now have their own McCarrick, a case of McCarrick 2.0.
The church is alive. The church is vital.
The Catholic Church in America was rocked by news in 2018 that Cardinal Theodore McCarrick was in fact a homosexual predator who for decades would take priests and seminarians to his beach house in New Jersey where he would sexually assault them. Rumors of his behavior had floated around for years, many bishops aware and Catholic media types later admitting they were aware but turned a blind eye. The few whistleblowers who did speak out were ignored or dismissed, like Richard Sipe,
attraction of a priest to adolescents,
the renowned sex abuse expert who wrote a letter in 2016 to San Diego's Bishop Robert McElroy detailing McCarrick's crimes. Quote, I have interviewed 12 seminarians and priests who attest to propositions, harassment, or sex with McCarrick, who has stated, I do not like to sleep alone. One priest incarnated in McCarrick's Archdiocese of Newark was taken to bed for sex and was told, this is how priests do it in the U.S. None so far has found the ability to speak openly at the risk of reputation and retaliation. The system protects its impenetrability with intimidation, secrecy, and threat. Clergy and laity are complicit. Bishop McElroy ignored the letter. It would later be revealed by papal nuncio turned whistleblower Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano that McElroy had in fact been handpicked by McCarrick for the California diocese. It was Sipe's correspondence to Pope Benedict in 2008 exposing McCarrick's predation that led the pontiff to impose restrictions on McCarrick, banning him from international travel and speaking engagements, restrictions McCarrick ignored.
To bring justice and peace into a torn and divided world.
Vigano was also first to reveal these restrictions in his 2018 bombshell testimony, exposing a network of complicit clergy protecting McCarrick and promoting what he called a corrupt gay mafia in the church. Not only that, it was McCarrick who'd been placed in charge of crafting the U.S. Church's response to the sex abuse crisis in 2002, a story broken by the Boston Globe in its famous Spotlight investigation. McCarrick, the homosexual predator, guilty of abusing and assaulting dozens of priests and seminarians, was the very man put in charge of drafting the Dallas Charter for the Protection of Minors, a charter that exempted bishops from accountability and allowed abuse in the church to continue for decades. A disturbing parallel can be drawn with the FSSPX, which is placed in charge of its child protection policies, its own homosexual predator, all with the blessing of Bishop Bernard Fillet. As Church Militant reported in our April 22nd Spotlight, Michael Gonzalez, a former student at the FSSPX St. Mary's Academy in Kansas in the 1980s, inserted a gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger on February 18, 2000, leaving among his personal effects what his family has called a suicide note, naming Father Anglès as his rapist.
He told me just in little increments that it wasn't just one time that it happened, that there were other occasions that it happened, that every time that my brother was called to the office, Father Anglès would abuse him in some way, shape, or form, whether it be him spanking him with a paddle or whether it be him actually raping him or just, you know, having other people present while that was happening.
His eldest sister, Teresa, confirmed the abuse in our first report, and now his little sister, Maria, is also speaking out.
He would sometimes break down, and he was just exasperated. It was very difficult to perceive what he was saying, but he would talk about the rape.
So was Michael afraid of coming forward with this? Was Father Anglès a powerful person?
He was very afraid. He would tell my parents on different occasions, and there were times I know he would drink excessively, and he would get overwhelmed with emotion, and he would yell at my father, and he would tell them, you know, why aren't you helping me? You know, Father Anglès, he really messed me up. You know, he's hurting me.
Michael's death left Maria traumatized.
It just shattered me. I was very close with Michael. He was a very kind and sensitive young man. He was an artist. He was so charismatic, and people really wanted to embrace him and love him and care for him and help him. But it seems that, you know, I think he had called out in so many ways and so many times, but he was so looked down on, you know. They turned him into a social pariah, an outcast.
Father Ramon Anglès holds one of the top positions in the society, who, as judicial counselor, oversees the laicizations of FSSPX priests, and whose canon law arguments are widely used to justify the status of the society, as clearly seen in articles authored by Anglès posted on the FSSPX website, as well as videos based on Anglès' arguments on jurisdiction. He was placed in this position by Bishop Bernard Fillet, Superior General for 24 years. This in spite of the fact that Anglès has had a trail of abuse allegations following him for decades. From St. Mary's, Kansas, where he served as pastor of the FSSPX chapel, to Dublin, Ireland, where he served as district superior, the highest FSSPX authority in that country. During that time, Fillet promoted him to the position of top canonical authority for the society, a role he serves to this day, living in the palatial Villa Grifoni Sant'Angelo in Castelgabbiano in Lombardy, Italy. The 18th century villa was used by Fillet to hold high-level meetings, as well as entertain VIP guests, including Archbishop Guido Pozzo, former head of the Vatican's Ecclesia Dei, the pontifical commission established to bring the FSSPX into full communion with Rome. Fillet transferred Anglès to Villa Grifoni in 2017. Anglès, who boasts of descending from wealthy Spanish nobility, has reportedly been friends for years with the man who gifted the property to the FSSPX in 2015, Baron Niklas Schrank von Notzing, a wealthy Bavarian patrician who's a generous donor to the FSSPX, as seen in this 2007 tax statement, showing more than a dozen large contributions to SSPX establishments around the globe, totaling more than $500,000 in a single year. He also contributed to the $40 million SSPX seminary recently built in Virginia, where Bishop Fillet is being transferred in August. It was that supposedly noble Spanish blood Angles prided himself in when he bragged of his ties to the Nazis. A number of eyewitnesses confirming the existence of Nazi paraphernalia in his office at St. Mary's. Students also confirming he invited them to watch the Nazi propaganda film, Triumph of the Will, in his apartment. Several sources with direct knowledge told church militant Angles has two faces: the charming side he shows to those he respects, and the abusive and tyrannical side he shows towards those he holds in contempt. His Nazism played directly into his sex abuse, treating those of a so-called higher race with dignity, while looking on boys like Michael Gonzalez and other alleged victims as little more than poor Mexican trash to be used and abused at his pleasure. This same man was appointed by Bishop Fillet to craft the child protection policies of the FSSPX, a fact confirmed by his attorney, Pedro Iragana-Garay, speaking to the Kansas City Star. Quote, "He is still with the Society of St. Pius X and is the author of its documents on policies, procedures, and protocols for responding to the sexual abuse of minors." Iragana-Garay denies the allegations on behalf of his client, telling the Kansas City Star in May, quote, "He denies and rejects most emphatically and unequivocally any allegation accusing him of indecent behavior ever." Iragana-Garay happens to be Angles' cousin and is a well-known Democrat, attorney for the ACLU, as well as, disturbingly for SSPX adherents, a well-known LGBT activist in Topeka, Kansas.
Adoption by gay and lesbian and transgender people is good for children.
He's a speaker at Topeka gay pride rallies and has made his career fighting for so-called LGBT rights.
Bigotry wrapped in prayer is still bigotry.
Defending same-sex marriage and transgenderism, among other things. Iragana-Garay has been featured in major media for his LGBT activism, including this Huffington Post piece,
representing gay, lesbian, and transgender folks,
and has taken part in debates in favor of gay rights.
Same-sex marriage is of benefit to children.
The SSPX continually warns its followers never to associate with the worldly, which opens up a line of questioning for the SSPX that would be somewhat uncomfortable. It's unclear if society money, meaning money that's come from SSPX followers, is flowing into the pockets of a notorious gay activist attorney representing Angles. In short, who's paying the bills?
We belong here.
The Society recently launched the website it calls Plan to Protect, featuring photos of children and promises of commitment to transparency. It's based on its partnership with the Canadian-based child advocacy group of the same name. While their partnership has lasted for several years, it's been largely invisible. The SSPX only launched its website in February of this year, months after it learned it was already under criminal investigation for sex abuse.
It's a bigger betrayal that the SSPX as an organization has been choosing to handle these situations like this.
And only days after SSPX whistleblower Jassy Jacobs went public with her own allegations of sexual grooming by Father Pierre Duverger, and how the case was badly mishandled by leadership. This domain registration proves the Plan to Protect site was registered in February 2020 under the French name for the society. It was registered in Switzerland, whose country code is CH. Menzing in Switzerland is the location of the General House, the world headquarters of the SSPX and the current residence of Bishop Fillet. Some see this recent website launch as little more than a public relations maneuver, meant to get out in front of the criminal investigation they knew at the time was about to explode. In fact, sources tell Church Militant that it aligns with a larger PR campaign meant to shore up the image of the SSPX before any official public revelation of criminal activity, a campaign that also included courting Catholic social media personalities to give the society some positive press to help with the coming storm. And the very words on the Plan to Protect website are a direct contradiction of the society's actions. For instance, on this page, titled Communications Regarding Abuse, The SSPX states, quote, "We strongly believe that it is the exclusive right and duty of Child Protection Services and law enforcement to investigate and to determine guilt or innocence. It is up to these authorities to make the final statement on such situations. The Society of St. Pius X will not and cannot assume this role." Not only is it a convenient way for the SSPX to disclaim any responsibility in conducting its own due diligence with regard to abuser priests, it's also a lie. The SSPX does indeed conduct its own investigations into sex abuse by its clergy, a fact Bishop Follet himself personally acknowledged in a 2017 written interview with Swedish media when the heat in Europe was starting to increase on the society and Follet. Quote, "As soon as the superiors are made aware of allegations of abuse from a member of the SSPX, a canonical investigation is opened, and the member is immediately suspended from any ministry that would give him care over souls." Going on to say, when the SSPX superiors are made aware of a possible case, it is immediately reported to the civil authorities, who are able to rely on the complete cooperation of the SSPX authorities. This is demonstrably false in case after case, most notoriously with Father Christophe Rouanel, sentenced by a French court in 2017 to 19 years in prison for the rape of 3 women. One he tortured with knitting needles and broomsticks during his sexual assaults. Not only did an SSPX canonical trial find the priest guilty of rape, Follet never reported him to civil authorities, as required under French law. Also, and what many have little knowledge of, including SSPX followers, there's a quiet standing agreement between the Society and the Vatican to report sexual abusers to Rome as well. Follet and leadership have kept that arrangement fairly quiet. And in the case of Father Rouanel, Follet ignored the arrangement and refused to report the case to the Vatican, reneging on his own understanding with the Holy See. The arrangement dates back to the end of the pontificate of John Paul II, wherein the Holy See delegated authority to the SSPX to conduct canonical trials on behalf of Rome against accused clergy, with Bishop Follet appointed as a judge. This was confirmed by Bishop Follet himself in this 2015 French article, in which he said of the arrangement, quote, "This is not new, but has existed for over 10 years. Follet has cited this arrangement to argue that the SSPX is recognized as part of the Church, even as he violates the arrangement's rules. In particular, Article 16 of this Vatican document, which requires Follet to report all abuse cases to the Holy See. Quote, "Whenever the ordinary or hierarch receives a report of a more grave delict, which has at least the semblance of truth, once the preliminary investigation has been completed, he is to communicate the matter to the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith." Rome also has the power to remove Follet as canonical judge, which it did in the case of pedophile priest Father Philippe Peignot. Rome was so unhappy with Follet's conduct, in which he repeatedly and for years endangered children by allowing the pederast to lead scout camps, that Cardinal Luis Ladaria, Secretary General of the CDF, wrote Follet in 2013 ordering him to appoint another judge to try Peignot in canonical court, which went on to deliver a verdict of guilty. The SSPX claims on its plan to protect site it cooperates with civil authorities, another demonstrably false claim, as shown in its egregious conduct in the case of Father Frederick Abbé. While SSPX leadership claims it contacted police immediately after learning of Abbé's abuse, they did, but in the most deceitful fashion imaginable.
Dominus vobiscum.
Bishop Follet and other SSPX clergy set about to withhold crucial evidence from victims' families and from the authorities, and they did so for years. Eventually discovered years later, the SSPX finally was forced to surrender it, which led to Father Abbé's criminal conviction. Their conduct was so outrageous, the prosecutor, the court, and victims' rights groups harshly condemned the SSPX for its deception and obstruction of justice. Church militants sent a series of questions to the SSPX, including, what is the exact procedure when you receive an abuse complaint against a priest, staff member, or parishioner? Can you please detail how you proceed? Whom do you first notify? Who makes the decision to contact law enforcement? How is that decision made? When is that decision made? Is a file kept of the abuse allegation for record-keeping purposes? As you know, this is done in dioceses around the world. Is there also a file kept on FSSPX clergy? Who is responsible for such record-keeping? When and how does the FSSPX decide to launch a canonical trial with regard to a priest accused of abuse? Consistent with the track record of the FSSPX, we received no response. Meanwhile, the priest reportedly responsible for destroying a number of victims' lives, including that of Michael Gonzalez, has never been brought to justice and continues to enjoy one of the most powerful positions in the FSSPX, thanks specifically to the protection afforded him by Bishop Fillet. After our last expose, some asked why Michael Gonzalez's parents didn't help him. As his sisters Teresa and Maria reveal, their own father was an abuser and refused to assist his son.
So your father showed no sympathy whatsoever when Michael came to him and told him about his rape by Father Angles?
No, he in fact would make fun of him. He would tell him that he was just a drunk, that he wasn't going to make anything of his life, that he was, he threw him out on the streets pretty much.
His father also had a violent streak.
He would oftentimes pick up whatever was around and throw it at us or hit us. I do recall an incident where he picked up a hammer and he hit Michael with it. He used to wear these combat boots that he would kick us with.
Michael's father, though outwardly devout, a daily mass goer and popular in the FSSPX parish, was a sex abuser himself, molesting children in the FSSPX community.
So clearly there was a lot of sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse in your family.
Yes.
Do you think that other people in the FSSPX community in St. Mary's knew about that?
Absolutely, 100% I did. There were a lot of families that we grew up around, large families. Their siblings would talk about abuse as well.
So other families in the FSSPX community were also being abused by their own parents or family members?
Priests, family members or priests.
Among the families Mario Gonzalez was friends with was the Palmieri family, whose father, Peter Palmieri, as Church Militant previously reported, was convicted and imprisoned just this year for raping his own daughter, and whose crimes had been made known to 3 FSSPX clergy back in 2012, who told Palmieri's victim not to report him to police. Michael's father's sex abuse was eventually found out by relatives who confronted him.
They gave him an opportunity to take care of the things he needed to take care of, and then turn himself in, and if that he didn't, that they would come and get him, turn him in.
And instead of turning himself in, he fled.
He fled, yes. And
how many felony charges was he facing?
I believe 9 felony charges.
Mario Gonzalez escaped to Mexico, where he lives to this day. Another sister, Maggie Gonzalez, has gone on the record confirming Angles's abuse of her brother. All 3 sisters have spoken to the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, which is actively investigating the priest. Angles has also been caught in contradictions, his attorney telling the Kansas City Star, quote, Father Angles had no reason or opportunity whatsoever to converse or meet with the students in private. He did not even have an office, nor did he use his office space until the summer of 1989. This is contradicted, however, by former altar boys who served at St. Mary's, who confirmed with Church Militant they met privately, one-on-one, with Father Angles on numerous occasions, contrary to what Angles's attorney is claiming. In fact, Angles moved into the same building as the boys' dorms in the 1990s, as several former St. Mary's residents confirmed with Church Militant, including Philip Goff, who taught at the FSSPX Academy in the 1990s and confirms Angles and his pro-gay Democrat attorney are lying. Joseph Rizzo, brother of former FSSPX priest Father John Rizzo, lived in St. Mary's and also confirmed Angles had moved into the boys' dorms, writing Church Militant, quote, I remember very well that he did move his office there. His denials of everything posted does not surprise me in the least. Church Militant contacted Iragana Garay with a number of questions, including whether his client is willing to return to Kansas to undergo questioning by authorities to help facilitate the criminal investigation. No response. How do you react to the fact that after all this happened with your brother, Father Anglès was actually promoted to district superior in Ireland, meaning he was the head guy for the SSPX in the entire country of Ireland. He was promoted to that position, and not even that. He was after that promoted to the very powerful position of official canonical advisor to the society, which he inhabits today. In fact, I don't know if you've seen the pictures, but he lives in a castle in Lombardy, Italy. Amazing, beautiful, palatial residence. How do you react to all that?
I just think it's the ultimate symbol of their own hypocrisy. You know, I think that's the epitome of he represents the epitome of their hypocrisy.
Cardinal McCarrick got away with his crimes for many years, largely protected by complicit clergy who either knew about his abuse and stayed silent or refused to believe the stories. It would take an abuse victim finally coming forward after decades of silence to force McCarrick's day of reckoning. While Michael Gonzalez can no longer speak for himself, his family speaks on his behalf, pleading for the justice he's been denied by leaders of the society. For the moment, Anglès is enjoying refuge by simply maintaining his innocence, while his alleged victims say he should be forced to face the music. Until then, he continues to enjoy high rank and prestige in the SSPX, thanks to the work of Bishop Bernard Fillet. Christine Niles, church militant,